It's been 10 years now since a team that weren't Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga. And across that period, the best placed second team has almost exclusively been Borussia Dortmund. Which raises the question, are Borussia Dortmund failing the Bundesliga? Now, before we begin, we need to have a massive caveat, and that is that the financial discrepancy between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund is cavernous. So on the board in front of me here, I've just got a graph showing you the revenue growth according to the Deloitte Money League, just showing the difference between how much money Bayern Munich are making here in the red and Borussia Dortmund here in the yellow. And as you can see, there's a sizable gap between the two of them. Now, it's easy to look at charts like this and have no sense what it actually means. So I took a look at the Deloitte Money chart to compare according to Premier League sides what this gap looks like. So if we imagine that Bayern Munich are Manchester City, and Borussia Dortmund would be somewhere like Everton, that sort of revenue spend. Now, Everton obviously still a big team in terms of revenue spend, but I think if we took the Premier League and got rid of all of the teams between Everton and Manchester City and then expected Everton to win the league every season, I don't think many people would be that happy. So with that caveat in mind, let's just take a little bit of a deep dive into the history of the Bundesliga title race. So on the board in front of me here, I've just gone back to the last time that a team who weren't Bayern won the league, and that is of course Dortmund back in 2010, 2011. So we've got the red line here, which is the title winner, which has obviously since this point always been Bayern Munich. And then the yellow line here, just showing you the points total that Borussia Dortmund have made in that time as well. As you can see, we start here from Jurgen Klopp, and there's not really many close encounters between the two teams. There's this period here under Thomas Tuchel, this period here under Lucien Favre, which is the closest period in terms of a title race. But let's just have a little bit of a talk about what happens at the beginning of this history. So we'll start with Jurgen Klopp. Now, it's important to remember the context for Jurgen Klopp is that at a point in the mid-2000s, Borussia Dortmund were very much in danger of going bankrupt. And around that time, they bring in a guy called Hans-Joachim Watzke as their CEO. He sorts out the finances, but it means that Dortmund are in a very specific situation. They can't spend a huge amount of money. They're going to have to rely on youth players. And so as a palliative to that, they bring in Jurgen Klopp, a manager who's been at Mainz at that time. And the idea is that they can bring in Klopp, he can use the youth players. He's got an exciting brand of football, and hopefully that can start bringing Dortmund back to the top. So if we go back to our board, Jurgen Klopp starts his tenure 2 seasons before these 2 title-winning seasons. And I think what's really important to notice just from the off is that in 2010-11, you've got a 75-point total here that wins him the league. Now that's point total would not win the league in any other season. So already there's a contextual element going on here. Louis van Gaal loses his job midway through that season. He's performed badly in the Champions League, and that allows Dortmund then to just jump in and win the title with a fairly low points total. The second points total here is a season when Jupp Heynckes is brought in to replace Louis van Gaal, and 81 points is enough to win Jurgen Klopp the league. And I think if you look through the season, there's very few seasons where actually that points total would win. And in fact, I think of the 3 of 4 seasons where it would actually win you the league, 3 of those are in the final years of our timeline here. So what is it about Jurgen Klopp that made him such a successful manager at Dortmund? Now, I think if you talk to a lot of Dortmund fans, they like to talk about his personality, his passion. We all know Jurgen Klopp, we've all seen what he's done in the Premier League. But actually, what's most important, I think, for Jurgen Klopp's title wins at Dortmund is the fact that he comes into a league which is actually very old-fashioned in terms of its tactics and develops a really exciting brand of tactics, which actually gives him an edge over Bayern. So on the board in front of me here, we've got that title-winning team of 2010-11. And here you can see all the famous names. Lewandowski, we all know, has just moved to Barcelona. Mario Götze as well, now back in the Bundesliga. I think the thing to notice about this team is that there are some players who are just sort of unremarkable at the time. And I know that in the British press ahead of the 2013 Champions League final, there was amazement at the fact that the team that Jurgen Klopp was putting out had only 1 player who cost more than £4 million. So you've got players like Kevin Grosskreutz, you've got Marcel Schmelzer, Lukas Piszczek as well. These all became household names, but no one expected them to be at the time. This team is usually thought of as a 4-2-3-1. We've got Götze in the 10 spot here, but I actually think of it more as a 4-4-2 because the big thing about this team was counter-pressing, and that's what Jurgen Klopp brought to the league. He changed the way that the league defended. So before Klopp came along, you got players just defending individual battles, 1v1, defending was all about being able to win against your immediate opponent. What Jurgen Klopp brings is a more collective sense of pressing. So out of possession, Dortmund would sit in this 4-4-2, they would funnel players wide for the opposition and they would spring pressing traps, but also this team were really good at counter-pressing as well. So what you'll often see from this team actually, interestingly, is that Weidenfeller, the goalkeeper, would just go long, hit the ball direct, try and get these direct attacks towards the goal. If not, the ball falls into this sort of area and you've got everyone around the ball and they can fall on it and you can win the ball back, and because the opposition is destabilised, you can actually try and generate goal-scoring actions in that way. And this just completely broke the league, and I think that's what contributed to Jurgen Klopp's 2 wins at Dortmund. But the thing is that very quickly Bayern adapt to this. So you can see here that Jurgen Klopp has these 2 season wins, low points totals. The following season, Jupp Heynckes wins the treble, wins everything that's available, the Pokal, the League and the Champions League, beating Jurgen Klopp's team in the final. And as you can see already, there's a big gap opening out here. The next season, Bayern do what they always do. They bring in a better manager. They bring in Pep Guardiola, and we all know how it goes from there. And as you can see, Jurgen Klopp never really recovers from that time. It's interesting that a lot of people focus on Jurgen Klopp's final season as the season where it all went wrong. This is a 7th place finish in 14-15. But actually, you can already see that gap opening out before that. And I think that's because Bayern recognised that Jurgen Klopp's tactics were so good that they had to respond to them. So from this point onwards, Dortmund adopt an approach which is, we're not going to be able to catch Bayern up. So our best bet is to always aim for 2nd place and hope that Bayern stumble. If they do, we can just nip in and win the league in that way. Now there's 2 problems with this. The first one is that it hasn't actually worked yet. So if we go to the board here, on the 18-19 season under Lucien Favre, this is the closest title challenge that we actually have in the Bundesliga. I think there's 2 points in it in the end. And if we look at this in closer detail, we can see the way that this pans out. Now, in terms of the context, Bayern Munich appointed Niko Kovac from Eintracht Frankfurt at the time, and as you can see, it really didn't start out particularly well. So if we look at the timeline here, yellow is the points that Borussia Dortmund pick up, and red are the points that Bayern pick up. And as you can see, it aggregates as we go along. So the team in the highest position is the team who's ahead in the table after those game weeks. And as you can see, Bayern start off quite poorly, and by game week 10, Dortmund are actually in the ascendancy here. And we go all the way along here until we reach this point around game week 20, where Dortmund are falling off a little bit. There's 3 draws in a row here, one of which is against FC Nuremberg, and that pulls the 2 teams much closer together. And we get to the point here, I think it's match week 28, and what happens is there is Der Klassiker, which is the game between Dortmund and Munich Munich win, and from then on, they ride home to the title. 2 points in it at the end, but this is a really good example of Bayern making a rare false start in the league and Dortmund not being able to capitalise on it. The other problem with this approach is that while Dortmund are sitting around waiting for Bayern to make mistakes, actually it's usually the other way around, and Dortmund mess up in terms of their managerial appointments. So if we go back to our timeline here, after Jurgen Klopp we go into Thomas Tuchel. He has a few seasons there. His first season actually narrows the gap between Pep Guardiola to 10 points, and this 78-point total will be enough to equal or beat the title winners' points total in 3 seasons in the last 4 seasons. So this is a really good effort, but obviously happens at a point in time when Pep Guardiola is at Bayern, and so it doesn't count for anything. We go from Thomas Tuchel, who seems like a sensible option to replace Jurgen Klopp. He's followed Klopp at Mainz and was an interesting tactical manager. But then we go into this next period. So Thomas Tuchel is replaced by Peter Bosz, who has been managing in the Eredivisie. He's a really exciting attacking manager, and the idea is that that's exactly what it is that Dortmund want. But it goes very horribly wrong, and midway through the season he's replaced by Peter Stöger, who's an entirely different manager. He's a very conservative manager. He was managing FC Köln at the time, and what we see then is just a massive switch from one approach to another. Now, after Stöger leaves at the end of that season, we then get Lucien Favre, again, another tactical manager, and he has that first good season, but then it drops off again. And when Favre leaves, his assistant, Edin Terzic, is brought in. And now, Edin Terzic is another, I suppose, more vibes kind of manager. He has worked as an assistant manager to a number of managers now, but he's brought in just as a temporary stopgap for the rest of that season. And then when he leaves, then they bring in Marco Rose. Now, Marco Rose is a Red Bull style coach, so very high intensity, direct play, counter-pressing. So again, what we're seeing is like lots of different coaches brought in, but not one coherent idea about what you might think that Dortmund should have as a tactical identity overall. And the problem is that it means that in this waiting for second place for Bayern to mess up. They just never seem to be in the right position when Bayern do make those rare mistakes, and this causes a problem. So this brings us to the present day and the question of whether or not Dortmund are failing the Bundesliga. Now, if we go back to our timeline for one final moment, let's just have a look at this trend line here. So we've already seen that when you get Henkers and Pep Guardiola here, that trend line's pushed right high up. But as you can see over the last few seasons, you can see that the trend line is actually tending downwards, which suggests that actually Dortmund should be thinking very carefully about what they make their next steps in the future to be. Because if that trend line is coming down and Dortmund can make their trend line go up, you can see already that there is a narrow gap between the two clubs right now. The problem is that at the end of this season, Marco Rose left the club. So it seemed as though, again, they'd made a sensible decision about the future, but rather than making that last for long enough for it to actually cause a problem to Bayern, then Dortmund are actually just back at square one. And the frustrations aren't just off the field in terms of the managers, but also on the field. So we already talked about Marco Rose making important steps towards maybe turning Dortmund on an upward trajectory. In the summer, Dortmund have brought in a few players to actually strengthen a Marco Rose team. So Nico Schlotterbeck brought in from SC Freiburg, Niklas Süle brought in from Bayern, two centre-backs to sort out defensive problems. And so you're already thinking, okay, this might be the footing that they need to move forward. Also got Salih Özcan here, who's brought in to, again, strengthen the defensive side of things, but also play as a pivot player here. Karim Adeyemi also brought in from Salzburg, and we all know about the sad news about Sebastian Haller. He was supposed to be playing in this 9 slot. They've been playing Moukoko in here instead. But all of these players brought in to strengthen a Marco Rose team, and then Marco Rose is gone. Dortmund's approach of waiting around in second place for Bayern to mess up hasn't really worked. Either Bayern have always had the better manager, or on the rare occasions where they haven't, Dortmund haven't been in a position to actually take advantage. So maybe it's time to move from a shorter term strategy to a longer term strategy. The last time that Dortmund won the Bundesliga, they had a manager who was there for 7 years, who had a clear tactical advantage over his counterparts. And maybe the time has come for Dortmund to sit down and have a think about how they can have a longer term strategy which allows them to recreate those conditions again. So have Dortmund failed the Bundesliga? I think that would be harsh to suggest, but at the same time, there's definitely things that Dortmund could do to be better in the Bundesliga title race.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic brings you the best sports journalism in the world in a personalised experience, connecting you with the stories and teams that you care about the most. There's coverage of 13 sports, plus direct access to world-class journalists through live Q&As, discussions and podcasts. Not to mention, it's all ad-free. And you can try it now for free for 30 days by clicking the link in the description.